Welcome to Fighting Words. Mike Straka along with Mike Urata. We have a very special guest, up and coming flyweight. Guys, freaking a monster. He's a killer, Cody Durden. Cody, welcome to the show.
Cody, man, let me tell you something. Big win, dude. That was a big win. A lot of people were really high on Charles Johnson. They said that, this is a guy who came into the UFC and he hasn't shown his skills. It's almost like, some of these fighters, they come in, they have a great regional circuit career. They look really good. They look good on paper. And then they come in, they kind of, once they get under that umbrella, people are kind of waiting for him. It's almost like Manel Cap. The same thing with Manel Cap. If you remember with him coming over from Ryzen, this is a guy who kind of didn't show out until later. A lot of people thought this was going to be Charles Johnson's time where he's going to maybe show everything he's got. Dude, you're one of those guys, and I'm not comparing you to him, but you're one of those guys that you're in the UFC, you're just slowly making this name for yourself, almost like Nate Landwehr. You got that Nate Landwehr effect where you just continue just to beat guys until eventually they're not going to be able to deny you, anymore. I mean, if you look at your wins, you got Charles Johnson, which to me was a huge win, Carlos Mota, JP Buys. The one blip in your radar was Mohamed Mokaev. That's what I wanted to ask you about. Now that you're on this 3-fight win streak, do you ever look back at stuff like that and be like, that's one I want back? I want that one back against Mokaev.
Man, so after my fight last March, a year ago, I went back to the drawing board. I went back to American Top Team Coconut Creek, and Mokaev was doing his fight camp down there. And I got to know him, and man, sometimes things in life, they just happen, and I think Mokaev's a good guy. I got nothing but respect for him. And I think we're on different paths, I think our paths crossed. He's obviously ahead of me. He's 4-0 in the UFC. But, yeah, man, I don't know what's next. I don't know if we'll cross paths again, but no, I'm trying to get paid if we do, I'm sure he thinks the same.
Mike mentioned a couple people that he compares you to. I have somebody in mind. There was a guy who was fighting at 155, and everybody told this guy he's too small for 155. He'll never be big enough for 155. He should be a 45-pounder. That guy was Frankie Edgar. And one of the things that you mentioned in one of your interviews is that you can't teach heart. And Frankie Edgar had nothing but heart. And you remind me of Frankie Edgar, man. The way you go out there, you're comfortable in any position. But more than that, your confidence is through the roof. What can you attribute to that confidence? And do you agree with that comparison to Frankie?
And just work ethic, so getting into all this, I'm 20 years old. I had my first son when I was 20, and I kind of did everything backwards in life. I worked a full-time job. I turned down college scholarship offers to go to college, and I chose to just work. And then a friend of mine was training MMA. I got involved in MMA. So I would literally work at this factory 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I would go and train when I got off work. I worked 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then sometimes I worked 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And no matter what, man, I freaking showed up. And I showed up to work. I had perfect attendance at my job 2 years straight. And I only know that because they gave me a bonus. They gave me a $500 bonus at the end of the year.
Nice.
So I never called out. And, man, I just showed up at practice every single day. Then there was a point in my life, I'm 25 years old. I just went pro. Now I'm on this big win streak. And I had to make a choice whether I wanted to continue to work in a factory 12 hours a day or I wanted to fight. And granted, at the time, I was making $80,000 a year. So it was a big decision to make, and everybody called me stupid. They called me crazy. So I ended up quitting and taking a job at a construction company for 3 years. But the plus side of that, I would work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. And so I'd have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I could train in the evening because I was working at the time. I was working from 7 to 3 or 7 to 5 every day, but I was still getting paid for that 10 hours. And when I was 29 years old, man, I got the call. You made it to the UFC. So, 2020 rolls around. I make it to the UFC. I had a fight with Chris Gutierrez, a great fight, and then I got scheduled to fight Jimmy Flick. And sorry, my dog's like
No,
barking
that's all
at
right.
me.
No problem.
I got scheduled to fight Jimmy Flick, and I tore my ACL 3 weeks before the fight, and then I broke my toe. I got to the fight. I ended up getting pink eye when I got there.
Damn.
So they pulled the fight. They said, "Hey, you want to fight 2 weeks later?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's reschedule it 2 weeks later." So the conjunctivitis was just going away by then, and I went out there and I got flying triangle after beating his ass, the whole round.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I made a promise to myself that I would never fight injured again, and since then I got my ACL fixed. I was out almost the whole year of 2021, and baby, we've been climbing ever since.
Yeah.
You put in the work, you show up every day, you put your priorities in front of your pleasures, and great things will happen.
You know, you mentioned it takes a camp, and before I'm not talking about American Top Team. I'm talking about your mom, your dad, and your wife. How inspiring have they been, and how influential have they been to your career?
Well, it all started with my mom and dad. My mom, she's the caretaker. She took great care of me, and really made sure that I wasn't such a bad kid. I was already a bad kid, but she used to beat the shit out of me when I got in trouble. But my dad, on the other hand, he was all about sports, and so I grew up playing wrestling, baseball, and when I was in middle school, everybody outgrew me, and I was like, "Dad, what's going on?" I'm playing football. I was a quarterback in little league, like every season, and then I was batting number one in middle school, but then everybody outgrew me, and I was like, "Dad, I'm gonna quit all sports and let's just wrestle." And he's like, "Let's do it." So we would leave practice at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd travel an hour to Atlanta, and we'd get another 2 hour practice in at least 4 times a week. And that's what we did throughout my whole high school career. And man, without my dad, you know, that's where I get the hard work from, man. He showed up at work, even, if he was sick or had the flu or whatnot, he was there. He was accountable.
When you look at your, like Mike said, I break down all the fights every week, and you'll probably be happy to know this, but we do a section in our write ups in our show called the Dog Pick of the Week, where we take the one underdog on the card that we feel is going to win, and we pick it. And we have a girl, Christine Showdown, who actually does that. You were our Dog Pick of the Week, to win that fight. And in my breakdown, the way I broke it down was basically everything you just kind of said without. I always said that the one thing about fighters, if you really look at their resumes on paper, there's some fighters that the UFC just does no favors for. You know what I mean? If you look at your resume, like you have a tough resume, man. Like you end up coming in, you fighting Chris Gutierrez. I mean, we all know how good Chris is. You had to draw on that fight. You fought Jimmy Flick, where at the time he was just kind of very tricky and awkward. Then you had the issue going on when you took that. Mokaev, JP Buys was the guy that people were kind of high on. Carlos Mota, a tough kid. Charles Johnson, everyone's high on. Like, they literally keep throwing these guys at you. And the one thing that I noticed with you is, I can't say about a lot of fighters, is you stick to what you're good at no matter what. A lot of guys, what they'll do is they can be really, really good strikers, and all of a sudden, they try to convert to something else. Or a guy who's a really good wrestler gets that one knockout, and all of a sudden he's sold. He got bit by the knockout bug. He tries to be a boxer. No matter what, land or sea, you go to what you're good at. And that's, in my breakdown, I said, this is just a tough, gritty kid who's going to come in. Charles Johnson can be flashy. He can do all the things he wants. He can have all the momentum. But there's something about Durden that when he comes into a fight, he puts his nose down to the grindstone and he just works and he sticks to the blueprint. You know what I mean? Is that something that you've noticed, that your camp noticed? That is there anything there, any times in your camp where they try to alter things, or do they just say, look, this is your ace. We're going to stick with this and we're just going to build upon that?
No, man. I mean, I'm the quarterback. You know what I mean? And one thing that I've noticed personally, I've gotten better every fight. You can see it. I'm getting better. I'm climbing the ladder. I'm making the sacrifices needed, and I'm putting myself in the positions where I need to be. Training with the best guys in the world, American Top Team, Coconut Creek. Every round. I'm with a savage. Drilling with Danny Sabatello, sparring Pantoja.
He's a firecracker, that kid Sabatella, man. Yo, he's fun. He's funny on the microphone too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Pahumpa still there? Marcus D'Amata?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, I love that guy.
Yeah, he and I go back a long way, man. Pahumpa is the man, and he's little like us, like you and I. I'm only 5'6", so I know how you feel. I can relate to everything you said about everybody growing, getting bigger than me when I was an athlete as a kid, and that's what I did. I went right to wrestling because I wrestled 101 all through high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But Coach Parumpa, the back trips,
Yeah.
the riding, the leg ride and the back control, man, that's all I drill with Parumpa. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu.
Now, are you on any kind of any kind of suspension right now as far as medical suspension? Are you healthy? You have any injuries or?
The guy gave me 30 days.
Oh, that's nothing. That's okay.
Yeah, that's pretty standard, right?
Yeah, and I'm not only a fighter, man. I'm a husband and a father, and I have to give time to my kids. I've been so wrapped up in the fighting. The 30-day suspension is just what I need. I need to sit back, relax, and be a father. Not just a fighter.
What do you want next, Cody? Like at the end of the day, if they gave you a piece of paper and said write down what you want, what's next? A fighter, what you're shooting for in your next fight, your immediate next fight. What would you want?
Man, first of all, man, I just want to get paid, And after the fight, Dana called me back to his office. It was pretty cool, man. He was at the fights at the Apex. In this back office with huge TVs, and called me back there and gave me some motivation, told me he loved what he saw and asked me certain scenario questions and, told me you're in, kid. And think so. I'm currently in negotiations for a new contract. And
oh, man, that's great.
What's next? I don't know what's next, but I wanted to be on U.S. soil and I want it to be in front of a crowd. I fought. I think that was my 6th fight at the Apex and one time in London. But, I want my mother and father and family and friends to be able to come and make it affordable. You know what I mean? The Apex tickets are high.
Yeah, they're crazy. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'll tell you, man, I just love everything about you. I love your fighting style. I love your personality. I love your character. I think you're intelligent. You're well-spoken. I think you're the epitome of what a UFC and a mixed martial artist should be. And I congratulate you, and I wish nothing but more and more success for you. I can't wait to see that belt around your waist, man, because you embody a champion right now.
Speaking of, one last question for me. Speaking of champions, what are your thoughts on Cejudo and Sterling this weekend?
I'm going to have to go with Sterling. I'm going to have to go with the more active fighter. The backpack machine, and man, he's gotten better. Man, he's
people still sleep on him, right?
Yeah, man. I think his striking's came along, and I think he's comfortable in the cage. And either way, you can't turn your head on Cejudo, though, man.
Yeah, he is.
So I don't know who's gonna win, but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you who's gonna win. You and I,
that's
that's a fight that I'm just excited to see. I
the whole card.
I don't care who wins, but who would I like to see win? Cejudo.
I think.
Am I going to be mad if Aljamain wins? No, he's worked his ass off.
I think you nailed hit the nail on the head when you said he's comfortable in the cage. I saw Aljo and I would say Dustin Poirier. Both of those guys went through a point in their careers where they didn't have the confidence. They had all the skill in the world, but they went through a couple fights where they didn't have the confidence. And I think now Aljo and obviously Dustin, they have the confidence, and the confidence finally caught up with the skill, and that's why they're doing so great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly, man. This last fight, I was so comfortable in the cage, man. I saw everything. I remember everything. And I remember hitting him in the 3rd round, and his body went limp for a second, and I pointed at him. I said, "Oh, I got you," you know what I mean? And then I hit him with a 1-2. So, when you start getting comfortable in there and just really remembering everything, talking to your corner man, that's when hey, you've leveled up,
You know, it's
Well, you
funny.
definitely did.
Every time I say your name, I want to say Tyler Durden from Fight Club.
Oh, you should do that, man. You should wear the red leather jacket one night out to the cage.
You should your nickname should be Cody Fight Club Durden.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, if you could go back in history and pick any famous person you want that you can, who would you fight?
Fight?
Who would you fight?
Well, I'm a big boxing purist, dude. He wouldn't be in my weight class, but the one guy I would love to fight was Sugar Ray Robinson.
I would
So
fight Bruce. I would fight Bruce Lee.
So that was one of the questions in the movie when he was in the
Oh,
bathroom.
that's right.
Oh yeah. What about you? That's a good question, though. Who would you fight in one person in history if you could fight?
And I'd beat the shit out of Adolf Hitler.
Oh, I thought you meant a fighter.
No,
You said any person in.
Oh, any person in history. Oh my God, that's a
famous person in history.
any famous person in history. Probably Kevin Bacon, dude. I can't stand Kevin Bacon.
All right, Cody. It's been a pleasure talking to you, man. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're settling down from the fight and you're back with your family, so we appreciate your time here at Fighting Words, man.